Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're doing something a little bit different today, and you probably noticed that Chris isn't here. He was involved in the video though. My baking habit has ramped up during quarantine. I've been trying to find ways to make things that Chris enjoys. He doesn't have a big sweet tooth, which is a problem when it comes to baking because a lot of things that I bake tend to be pretty sweet. So I've been using this quarantine to try and experiment with some savory baking, especially breads, just like everybody else. But something that I hadn't had a chance to try before is something that I really like, which is bagels. So instead of just making just like plain, regular old bagels, I wanted to do something just a little bit different, a little bit more fun, and something a little nostalgic for the both of us. There is a series on Bon Appetit's YouTube channel called Gourmet Makes, where their resident pastry expert, Claire, recreates iconic snack foods. Back in December, Claire recreated a childhood favorite of ours, bagel bites. For those of you who may not remember bagel bites, they're tiny little bagels with pizza toppings on them. A lot of people call them pizza bagels. Bagel Bites is the brand name. Oh my goodness, you guys, they looked so good. So luckily there was a Reddit user by the name of Puzzle-Headed Occasion who wrote down Claire's recipe and posted it on Reddit for all of us to see and try ourselves. Not being a gourmet chef and also being in quarantine and struggling to get a hold of some basic ingredients, much less things on a little more gourmet side, I made some tweaks of my own so that I can make this recipe only with what we had and with a couple of things that we could very easily access. I stuck with the basic pepperoni and cheese, just the classic Bagel Bites toppings, but you could make these and put whatever toppings you like on them. And these turned out so good, and I'm so excited to share the process of making them with you. So let's jump right in and I'll show you how to make gourmet bagel bites or pizza bagels at home. First up, I made my pizza sauce. I preheated the oven to 300 degrees, then drained a 28-ounce can of whole peeled tomatoes, reserving some of the liquid. Next, I smashed and peeled a whole bunch of garlic, and then I combined it with 3 tablespoons of olive oil and a 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper, which was then sauteed in a Dutch oven over medium heat until the garlic was nice and fragrant. To that, I added 3 tablespoons of tomato paste and sauteed until everything was nice and caramelized. Then I added in the tomatoes and a splash of the reserved liquid from the before, along with oregano, salt, and pepper. Finally, 2 sprigs of basil. Everything got acquainted before being covered and baking in the oven for about 40 minutes, getting stirred halfway through. While the sauce was cooking, I turned my attention to my bagel dough. I activated 1 teaspoon of dry yeast and added it to a mixture of 3½ cups bread flour, 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 1 cup of room temperature water. Stirred until a shaggy dough formed, and then spent the next 15 minutes kneading it by hand and getting an arm workout until a smooth and firm ball of dough had formed. Once the dough was ready, I covered it with a kitchen towel and let it sit at room temperature until it had doubled in size. While the dough was rising, I turned my attention back to the sauce, which was dumped into a food processor and pulsed about 10 times until the desired texture was reached. I tasted for seasoning and then let it cool before storing in the fridge. After that, it was time to move on to shaping the dough. I weighed out each piece so that it would be even, formed it into a mini bagel shape, and placed on a cornmeal dusted baking sheet. Once all of the bagels were formed, I covered the trays in plastic wrap and put them in the fridge to ferment overnight. Of course, because these are pepperoni and cheese bagel bites, I needed to prep my pepperoni before the day was done so I'd be ready to assemble in the morning. The next morning, I took the bagels out of the fridge and performed a float test to see if the dough had risen enough. The first time they hadn't, but I let them rest at room temperature for a couple of hours, and oh, would you look at this, it floats. That means it's time to boil these bagels. Before I started boiling my bagels, I went ahead and preheated my oven to 450 degrees. Then I grabbed the same Dutch oven from yesterday, filled it 2/3 of the way with water, and dumped a whole bunch of honey in there for sweetness. I mixed that up over medium heat until everything was nice and incorporated, and then turned the heat up until everybody was at a boil. I then worked a few bagels at a time and boiled everything for 1 minute or 30 seconds on each side, and then set them aside to drain.
After those bad boys were dried off, I put them back on cornmeal-lined baking sheets and baked for 11 to 15 minutes until golden brown and delicious. Then I pulled them out and my house smelled like delicious bagels. It was then time to top them. The first time around, I did a typical sauce, cheese, pepperoni order, but I did this a second time and would recommend that you put your toppings on before your cheese so that the cheese melts and helps the toppings stick on to the bagels. I put these under a broiler on high for about 3 to 5 minutes until the cheese was nice and bubbly and everything was warmed through. And then, oh man, it was really hard to let these ooey gooey things cool before giving them to a very happy Chris.
Oh my gosh, you guys, these turned out amazing. We ate them for dinner one night and lunch the next. In total, this made, I'm gonna say about 36 bagel bites, and we didn't slice our bagels. Claire did, and your kind of typical bagel bites, you would have sliced the bagel in half, but I'm not really one to be trusted with serrated knives, and frankly, this made a lot. So we didn't feel the need to split our bagels. And really just kind of splitting them kind of 9 for me, 9 for Chris for 2 meals each was quite enough for us. I learned a lot from making bagel bites, particularly when it comes to making bagels at home, since this is my first time. I definitely am going to try making bagels again. I'll be trying some different recipes and things. I went with what Puzzle-Headed Cajun and therefore Claire did. You know, making a couple of substitutions here and there as needed, but I know that there are all kinds of really good bagel recipes out there, and bagels would be awesome to learn how to do at home, like for real. This was a lot of fun. Chris and I certainly enjoyed the end result, and I really enjoyed filming this for you. So if you like this video, please consider subscribing to our channel so that when we do more things like this, you can be notified and kind of see what's cooking in the kitchen, especially if we continue to be quarantined. And let me know in the comments or on social media if you decide to make your own bagel bites at home. I'd love to hear what toppings people are putting on them. Maybe this was a nostalgic trip for you. Maybe you make your own childhood snack, or maybe those of you with kids who are a little younger, you introduce them to bagel bites by making them this way. That's gonna do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.